That's a nice.
Well, love.
I think it's my bad.
Okay. Okay, welcome everyone to our July 21st, 2026 Board of County Commissioners 9 o'clock board briefing meeting. Let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present. And we've got a busy agenda, so we will go ahead and just get started. So Ruth Schmidt, our CEO of Broadlink, welcome.
Good morning, Commissioner. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come and share an update with the Broadlink PDA. First and foremost, commissioners, this is an exciting briefing because what was born in 2022, I'm going to share with you, has come to be. And so really the first thing is to the commissioners. And then also, I'm really delighted that so many Broadlink members are here. Commissioner Cuny, I'm not sure if Kyle is on screen with the way. Okay, Kyle Tuig, and then Scott/Jeff, depending on who's there. I really could not be more grateful. And then Council Member Ben Wick and Mayor Terry Cooper. I just thank you. I also want to just take a quick moment to say thank you to Scott Chesney. He and I have been working a lot about what does broadband access mean in the future of Spokane County as far as economic vitality. We actually have a chapter devoted to broadband connectivity, not only from the urban core, but outside, what that means for infrastructure, for households, businesses, and anchor institutions. And it's just been a really neat synergy going forward. So really enjoyed working with him, especially as I segue into the $90 million of state and federal funding that has been awarded to Broadlink to do such that. So we will be working definitely in that going forward. Ron, do you mind popping over to the website? I decided to give the update basically based off of our website because I really wanted you to know we work hard to make our website a tool for you to use. So if I share something today and you're like, what was that? Hopefully it will be easy for you to navigate on the website to find that fact or also share it with constituents. We are going to cover first the BEAD culmination. And so if you go under About and hit the down arrow, there's a page dedicated to BEAD, only because you guys don't live and breathe this. BEAD stands for Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment. It was put into effect by Congress in 2021. The national funding pot was $42 billion. Washington State's allocation was 1.24. Spokane County ended up at about 120 million, with Broadlink stewarding about 90 of that. Ron, if you don't mind scrolling down, there's a map there. So the first thing I want to share with you is right now, out of 27 provisional awardees, Broadlink is the only signed contract. Out of 230 project areas, we are directly awarded 13 of them. In this map, you can see the dark orange. That is the culmination to our federal and state total. That is what's called hybrid design of fiber and fixed wireless, connecting nearly 10,000 eligible addresses that the FCC has coded as part of the grant award. There's nearly about 21,000 across Spokane County. And as you can see, the other colors in there are the other provisional awardees. No one else has signed a contract. And we're hearing rumblings that, that may or may not happen overall. And the reason for that, at the direction of the board, we applied to all 27. So we're standing at the ready. If someone defaults, if they don't sign their contract, not only can we stand in the gap and make sure that's finished, but we can also come alongside as a government entity to help them with their environmental, their planning. So in that, we do have a priority of build project areas. We're right now in our refinement of designs. We've procured materials. We hope to go out for preferred contractor bids in September. And again, ideally get some ground turning by the end of the year. If you could scroll down a little bit more, Ron. If somebody asks you when things are going to happen, there's a timeline towards the end of the bottom and keep going until you see the next picture. this shows what we're doing, when it's going to happen, and who we're working with. So everything in orange, Broadlink's taking the lead. We're doing a lot of things on our own, permitting, environmental. In fact, the broadband offices really look to us to do the NEPA certifications to get this off the ground, partnering with engineering firms, and then ultimately construction and tower firms. Not unlike ARPA, which I know you guys are very familiar with, this has a fixed deadline of December 2029. So all of this has to be done. That's about 400 miles of fiber and over 20 towers that we will be connecting to. Yes. The good news is those towers are in partnership with Spokane County. So we can get those up, lit, and servicing folks way sooner than the fiber part, which really helps not only constituents, but also Broadlink and our ISP partners. Before I go to the next part, any question about BEAD? Because we launched Broadlink because of BEAD. I can share a little bit more about what's going on at the state and federal level, but I want to make sure I've addressed anything that's come up, because that is a buzzword every now and then.
So the BEAD acronym, can you repeat that again?
Broadband, equity, access, and deployment.
Okay.
And it's at the top of this page, if you ever forget.
If I
Veronica,
can
you wanna
read
go to the top?
Okay.
Cause it kept its naming convention even through the administration. So it was birthed under the Biden administration, but it's kept the same name through the current administration.
So what are the uses of the funds that since 2021, I think things have kind of evolved. So what are the uses that you can use the funds for?
So there were two buckets. One was called the infrastructure bucket, and that's what I'm talking
Right,
about today,
right.
obviously. And the other bucket was originally the equity bucket that has been determined to need revised clarification. We heard last month from Secretary Ludnick that clarification and final rule coming in August. And there's a number, I mean, Rep. Baumgartner, we work with Cantwell and Murray. There's a lot of concepts that are being floated of what we think that will be. Not too far from the equity and access world, but just different wrappers. The first one being resiliency. How does infrastructure that you put in provide resiliency to a local community? And the second being public safety, which then trickles up to national security. So from what I'm hearing on the ground, those are the projects alongside workforce development that they're going to allow state officers to use their remaining funding pots for. In Washington, that's around 450 million.
You had talked about the did you say 1.4 million that was allocated to Washington State? Has all of that been allocated to the different areas around the state?
So that's actually part and parcel to Commissioner Waldrof's. So that 1.24 was our whole pot.
Yep.
And it had two sides of it. The infrastructure side has been awarded.
It is, okay,
But
okay.
the other side is waiting for the federal guidance
Okay.
to know what we can use it for. Broadlink has a number of things that we think are good uses of that would support not only Spokane, but the state, but we're waiting for the secretary to give the guidance on that.
Okay.
And that's the 400 million and change.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick follow-up on that. So do you expect any debate over the guidance, or did Congress approve changing the use of the funds?
So that's the interesting thing is
And I'm just trying to figure out, I'm interested in seeing the funds for
Yeah.
education and economic development and workforce development, because there's a lot of people I think that would benefit from learning how
exactly.
to get digitally connected, because that's another barrier, just understanding how to use it to find a job, to get retrained, right?
So the short answer is it doesn't need congressional approval, because when the act was voted in, those were technically called non-deployment funds. So I guess the good news is there's a lot of elbow space. And it does seem that even though equity isn't in there, whether it's, you know, across the board states, everybody understands that workforce literacy is a part of a well-educated constituent. So I think you're going to see that, maybe not to the extent that it's before, but again, that is still very applicable in what we're hearing today coming from.
But what we received is for deployment of actual.
Correct. It's the infrastructure side. So, again, I'm grateful for the support to sign that because I am a little perplexed at why no one else is signing because of the shortages in fiber, you know, silica, all of the workforce supply. We really wanted to get ahead of the game, especially because Washington was a little behind in getting our approval. So it is a little perplexing that the rest of the awardees are focusing on things that when we did our cost benefit analysis really introduced more risk rather than less risk. So hopefully we're in conversation with almost all of the other provisional awardees, telling them to ask us questions so that they can peek behind the curtain to get moving forward. All right, so the other thing I just wanted to talk to you about was our grant award of about $5 million to North Spokane County. Ron, if you don't mind going again under the about and clicking down to network. This is another site. It will be revised shortly, but we have a static map now. If you'll scroll down, Ron. There are icons of where Broadlink has active deployments, where our 6, soon to be 7 partner ISPs can extend their subscriber expansion. The one that's up north just south of Deer Park in the blue, that is that $5 million USDA area. 400 homes, Commissioner Kearns, were tagged at under 10 megs by 1 meg, which is barely a dial-up connection 2 years ago. And we are in the process of having that complete by this fall and service extended. I would say the biggest thing I would like to share with you about this is a lot of times folks don't understand what these federal funds can do during the grant window for them. In order to connect a home to fiber, we have to get a waiver or permission. And again, that's where we're really trying to focus on those 400 addresses that really free things are out there as long as you sign permission for us to bring this fiber to your home. It doesn't come with the obligation to have internet. And we've done a number of studies. We just released a news release today. Property values on average increase by 5% when broadband is shown as accessible. And shout out to Assessor Konis. They have a broadband section on our assessor database, again, especially in rural areas. So we're really trying to get ideally 100% of those 400 homes, return the waiver. Even if they just construct it and don't use it, it's really a no cost investment. So again, please get the word out on that. And if Ron, if you want to go to that other page, we just launched a digital way in addition to a mailer of being able to have constituents go online and put in their address. And they're tagged with what funding source that they are eligible to receive. So they can real time look it up. If they're eligible for fiber, they can fill out the waiver on their phone right there, get it back to us. And then when we are ready to construct, the contractor sets a time with them. They say, go around this bush. We're looking out for sprinklers. So again, we really want to make sure that nobody at the end of this grant goes, I didn't know. So that's something we just really wanted to share with you. And the last thing about this particular deployment is something brand new, first in the country, is the USDA grant comes with an obligation to operate a community center. And we proposed a community center in a box because I didn't want to run a building after that. And so we have an interlocal agreement with Fire District 4 to have a extra large connex with a telecommunications room, 2 HIPAA and CGIS compliant meeting rooms that our partners can actually have remote visits in that center will be funded by 2 years, fed by a fiber connection, and afterwards it's property of Broadlink. They can go anywhere it's needed. So we're grateful for Providence that's helping us outfit the inside for behavioral health, telehealth, accessibility. And then once we get into Bede, not only that building, it has a retractable tower that will service up to 1,000 remote addresses that will be added to our currently live Deer Park and Medical Lake towers. So again, we want to make sure that if constituents don't have the internet that they desire, chances are it's there or it's coming. So please reach out. We've got a few updated pieces of information. So commissioners, here's our the latest brochure, and I was short one notepad, but if anyone wants a notepad, you're welcome to have a Broadlink notepad. So anyway, any other questions? Because I know you've got a busy schedule today. All right,
Thank you for what you do.
thank you.
Yes, great
All
job.
right.
I mean, it's pretty amazing what, thinking that there's been no other kind of government like us. And just to think that, you started off down in South County doing a town hall after ARP. So then to get to this point, to know they needed coverage, they didn't have coverage during COVID shutdown. And so that's what really started the whole process and drove us to get here today. And now $90 million later.
You've overcome a lot. I remember a couple of years ago, their scoring, we got dinged on a grant thing because they didn't know what a PDA was, kind of thing. I mean, so this entity has come a long way, showing folks that this model works too.
Definitely.
I heard the sheriff comment just recently. He was down in Fairfield or Rockford. And he had the best connectivity ever.
It's great to hear from somebody else. That makes it feel so
I've never had that good a connectivity down here.
Yes.
That's awesome. Great.
So
Thank you. I appreciate the time to share. Reach out anytime.
we have Tori online.
Good morning.
Morning, Tori. Welcome.
I'm here again to brief you on another contract we have. This one is for our CASA program, our GAL program for our dependent children. It's a 291,324. And with that, we fund we have about 120 volunteers that advocate for the abused and neglected children throughout the dependency process. And so we have 3, we call them CASA supervisors that work with those volunteers to assist in that process, provide training, etc. So ongoing every year. We're going to be running into some issues with staff salaries for these funds to fully cover those 3 staff. We seem to get by because of leaves every year. For example, one of these staff is going to have a baby, so we'll be taking 12 weeks off, and so that'll get us there. But something we'll have to deal with next year. Any questions on these funds? They're passed through AOC.
Not seeing it. It's a great program that's actually needed and necessary. And a lot of it's volunteers, correct? How many volunteers do you have for the CASA program?
120.
120.
Yeah. We still stay at the highest filings in the state.
Okay, thank you.
All right, have a great day.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
So everybody's doing well. We have Jake Saxon, our design engineer, here this morning to talk about the West Plains PDA and a funding package for a project.
Yeah, so project here is County Road Project 3279. It's the Geiger Boulevard and SR 902 roundabout meters. Quick summary of what the project is, it basically consists of constructing a roundabout meter traffic signal system at the roundabout in the intersection of Geiger Boulevard and State Route 902 at the Medical Lake interchange with Interstate 90. Basically, the objective of the project is to mitigate traffic impacts from current, previous, future land development projects in the area. Without the project, capacity issues will continue to grow, and future land development will exacerbate these issues. And basically, it's a washed off facilities through development impact mitigation, constructing the project. Project funding and approval, this was included on the 2026, 20 to 2031 6-year transportation improvement program. Item number 10 in the urban construction program, and was shown as partially funded. Total project costs are $584,000. $284,000 development mitigation fees. And then the security funding that was shown as the West Plains CDA with $50,000. That's the interlocal agreement that we're here to talk about. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I think the board's aware of this. WashDOT can't take mitigation money from land development. This is really a mitigation project for the Douglas Legacy development, light industrial development north of Change. And so we're the surrogate for WashDOT projects. The funding flows through us. It's a WashDOT project, and we have to facilitate them though for land development in order for it to be mitigated, because WashDOT can't.
So here, just quick location, if you're not familiar with it, basically the overall map is pointing to the Medical Lake interchange on I-90, and then this is the north side of the interchange where there's the multiple roundabouts. The lower roundabout is the one that's the interchange off ramps, and then the northern one is the roundabout with SR 902 and Geiger Boulevard with Taper just off to the east. Next slide. Basically with the 300,000 of unsecured funding, the West Plains Airport Area Public Development Authority, doing business as S3R3 Solutions, has signed the interlocal agreement to reimburse up to 300,000 of project costs from the transportation related revenues generated by activity within the boundaries of the PDA that are received and held by the county. This is consistent with our previous interlocal agreement for the Geiger Boulevard project, where they funded a portion of that overall Geiger construction. Execution of the interlocal agreement by the board will fully fund this project. Next slide. Project schedule. Currently briefing today, and then we're intending to have the interlocal agreement resolution to enter the interlocal agreement on for August 11th. And then same date have a resolution to approve funding and advertise for bids for the project, and then immediately follow with bids that Thursday, open bids after 3 weeks, and then be back on the agenda to award following bid opening. Start construction this fall, and as materials arrive for the signal components are long lead items, and as those arrive, finish construction in the early 2027. That's it. Any questions?
Yeah, what we were told at the PDA board meeting a couple weeks ago was that the mitigation funds were gonna be spent first, and our funds for the PDA were the backup. They would be the last funds spent. Is that consistent with your understanding as well?
Yeah, and Jake's been kind of this too, but it's a timing issue. We are anticipating development mitigation funds coming in that quite likely will offset those funds that are current. We just have to show the project funding. If the land development mitigation funds come in timely like we expect, then there may be no funds required by the PDA. To go out to bid, we just have to have security. So
Well, the
timing
board
is-
unanimously approved it and stuff, so we were on the group.
Yeah, but hopefully there won't be any West Plains dollars in it at the end of the day.
To elaborate on what it is, the 284 that we have secured, those were like Matt said, the Douglas development was a portion of that. Those mitigation fees have already been collected, and another portion was one of the second or third Amazon developments out there.
Yeah.
There's a 7-Eleven. There's also I forget the name of it, but it's like the truck, that one, and then there's I believe it's the truck wash, that part, that piece. fronting Geiger in front of the second Amazon. Those all have mitigation fees that are in excess, anticipated mitigation fees that are in excess of that 300,000. So if they get, use those instead of.
Thank you.
Can I know I've driven through there a number of times, but I can't remember, is that a single lane roundabout or a double lane roundabout?
It's a double.
It's a double.
So what this signal is effectively it's that northern roundabout, you've got large traffic volumes coming from the east. Hayford comes down and then everybody has to turn on Hayford. There's a double right turn lane for Hayford to Geiger, and then there's 2 lanes coming into that roundabout. And essentially what you've got is the westbound to southbound left turns, that 3/4 movement through the roundabout saturates the roundabout to an extent that SR 902 traffic coming in from the west eastbound have a hard time getting gaps, and that's what this signal will help with. The signal is set back to the east of the roundabout, works much like the roundabout ramp meter, or sorry, the interchange meters that we see out on I-90.
Yeah.
That basically sends 1 or 2 at a time, and that helps create gaps so that then the SR 902 entering doesn't back up and the whole thing functions better.
Okay, do we, I know the ramp meters that are on I-9, do we have any roundabout meters in Spokane County? Anywhere else? I can't think of where no, this is the first. Okay.
This will be our first.
Okay.
All right. The goal is to not need a roundabout, but once we start running capacity issues, that's really one of the only effective measures.
Okay.
Bring it back.
Thank you. And this is something, what place PDA supports this?
Yeah, we already voted on it at the board meeting last week or week before last. And it was unanimous support.
Okay.
All right, next item for the board's consideration is easement. Next slide, please. So you can see we're out in the valley here. This is Appleway and Mishman Micah. And this is part of our couplet project back prior to Valley Incorporation. And the parcel in the middle there is a remainder from when we did that project. You can see outlined in red, that's the proposed easement area. And all we're really doing here is cleaning up, giving the city of Spokane Valley a formal drainage easement for that area for the drainage swales that have existed since we built it. And we want to surplus the rest of it. And they just really wanted to have a formal easement granted to them, understandably, so they'd have the ability to maintain those facilities. Happy to answer any questions.
Any bites yet on the sale of that property?
No, we're going back out again with that, with an auction very soon that the board will be hearing. And after that, we'll go to the website and then it will just be on our website, and then it'll be a more traditional way of buying, and maybe that will get us some traction. And I imagine we'll be proposing to bring the price down a little bit, but it's good property. If you've been out to it, it's a fairly prime location for use. So hoping to get good money out of that one. I'd have to look. I know we saw proposal, but it was with the 15 or 20 other ones that wanted to speak. Okay, next item. So this one is a small item. It's a quit claim deed. And this is up on the South Hill. I don't believe we have a vicinity map with this one. Yeah. So you can see the area outlined in blue up there is an old dedication to Spokane County with the Moran Court Edition. And it was always premeditated in the recording that upon future storm drainage improvements in the area that made the necessity for this go away, it would be dedicated back or quit claim back to that parcel outlined in yellow. And when we built our 57th Avenue project years ago, it's our recommendation that that condition has been fulfilled. So at this time, we're just cleaning it up by doing a quick claim clear title on this property, formally give that blue area to the yellow parcel there. Any questions? Thank you. Slide. So the next two items, I'm gonna kind of do those together. I believe they're in one PowerPoint also. And this is part of our Harvard Road project. We've been working for a little better than a year with the constituents out there and the affected parties. We have got the vast majority of them signed. We're down to 2 properties at this point. And I'll kind of walk you through those. You can see up on the aerial, that's kind of what we're building there. That's the section. See the 2 through lanes with the white shoulders, the separated multi-use path. Next slide, please. And that's just telling you where the project is. I think you all know where Harvard is. We're south of Trent and north by 90 city limits. Next slide. So 58 individual parcels that required acquisition. We have 55 to date. So it's been really a tremendous effort by our right-of-way group. They just do such a phenomenal job. They really are very professional. They represent us well. They close on many parcels. We just have a couple of outstanding ones. Map 24, Brooke Kelly, we're at an impasse, that person. And then a manufactured home community, which is number 43, and then the railroad too, but railroad's a different issue. You don't have the railroad as we know. So we'll continue working with the railroad. They're not opposed to it. It's just get the communication slow in essence. So we'll keep working with the railroad also. Next slide. So the first one, we call it map 24. That's just how they're numbered. And you can see on the left, the area in green is the area being acquired. And you can see on the right on the aerial what that looks like to the person's property. And it's a taking. It's not, they're asserting a lot of things. They would like a lot more than we're currently offering. That's the impasse. So we'll start through the process with them, hopefully get to resolution or at least get necessity in use and get ability to get the property for our project. Next slide. And map 43 is the mobile home park, Bona Vista Mobile Home Park. And you can see we're on maps turned sideways. That would be the west side of Harvard, and that's Wellesley at the south end. So it's a pretty long strip, and you can see, you know, not without impact there. We have negotiated back and forth a number of times, and we're getting very close. So my hope would be we get this one settled out of court in the not too distant future. Again, we're very close on this one. Next slide. So any questions on those condemnations? Jasper, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, for the commissioners, on your afternoon agenda, we are asking to have you approve the notice of a public meeting to be held on August 11th to discuss both of those condemnations that we're looking at. What we are anticipating on August 11th is a public meeting, not a hearing. So just wanted to make that distinction for you all so that we could have clarity on that.
So it's not 2 o'clock.
It'll be at the same, it'll be at the 2 o'clock. It'll just be a separate category from the hearings. You'll have a open public forum like you would for the public meeting, but you aren't expected to have have testimony there. What will happen at that meeting is presentation of the engineer's report, and then the board will decide whether it would like to approve the condemnation action. Then we will proceed with the petition after that.
So no public testimony.
No public testimony is anticipated other than what occurs at the
Written public comment.
written public comment is that's a possible.
Okay.
Questions on them?
I think so.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, it goes here. Here.
Morning, commissioners. No George today, so you're stuck with us. They're gonna walk you through some CDBG urban county requalification.
Thank you. So the urban county requalification period is a process that occurs every 3 fiscal years. So it's that time of year again, and we're going to be doing the recertification process with all the municipalities, cities, jurisdictions that are involved in the urban consortium. These are for federal grant allocations. So that's your CDBG, home, ESG, for our Housing Community Development Department. The HCDA, or the Housing Community Development Act of 1974, is kind of where this derives from. This allows for participating members the opportunity to either opt out if they choose not to be part of the urban consortium or remain within. Non-participants, if they decide to opt out, would apply directly from the state of Washington for any CDBG, home, ESG funding rather than Spokane County. So it messes a little bit with some of the entitlement and the availability of funding, excuse me. And there's some calculations in terms of population thresholds, et cetera, that they would be a little bit less competitive with the state rather than Spokane County, I think would be a fair assumption. But the counties must meet a specific population threshold to be eligible as an urban county. So as it's said at the bottom of that screen there, it's based on 2 factors: the county's unincorporated areas and then participating units of general local governments, or UGLUCs as they're referred to. Next slide, please. So I should say that for the next 3 fiscal years, that's for fiscal years 27, 28, and 29 is what we're concerned about here. So we had currently, over the past month and a half now, I would say, reached out to all involved UGLUCs, or those participating members, jurisdictions, et cetera, just more or less trying to receive a formal letter of intent on whether they intend to recertify and continue in participation, or if they would like to opt out. If we did not receive any response, then we would assume that they are remaining. We did receive a letter of intent from all participating UGLUCs to ensure that they are going to renew for those next 3 fiscal years. And the urban consortium members are included on the screen there: Airway Heights all the way to Waverly, all small and large participating members within the urban county. Next slide, please.
I'm just gonna confirm City of Spokane Valley is.
City of Spokane Valley is included in this process. We did have conversations with the City of Spokane Valley. They are renewing their agreement as well. Great question. So the cooperation agreements, after we received those letters of intent, we've worked very closely with our legal department in reviewing the language and getting some revised agreements sent out to each one of those municipalities. They are currently being reviewed, being presented from their city councils, town halls, et cetera, to be reviewed and then signed, and then sending them back our way. The deadline that we gave them is by the end of the month. Once we have all of those cooperation agreements, we will present those to the board following the 2-week recess that you have, and presenting that, I believe I said on August 11th during that legislative session, to have counter signature on all those cooperation agreements to initiate that package. Once we have countersigned all those agreements, that will be our official submission to HUD. Unfortunately, just kind of due to their deadlines, their original date was August 10th, but we already were in communication with HUD and informed them of the 2-week recess, and we're able to push that day by about 2 days. So we have until the following Wednesday to ensure that we can meet our deadline that was provided for us. So once we submit that package, HUD will then review, and if there are any issues with the cooperation agreements, they'll inform us, but likely they'll just send us a letter of notification saying that we have recertified, including all of our participants for the next 3-year period. Next slide, please. I believe it's just any questions that the commissioners may have.
What's that acronym?
UGLUCs, I believe it's on the second slide.
Units of general local government?
Correct.
UGLUC. That's one of the more memorable acronyms I've heard lately. Yes.
Thank you. Very standard, but appreciate it.
Yep.
Sounds like a Star Wars creature.
Be sure to thank your local UGLA.
Even Uglugs need love.
Yeah.
And heading buffers right. Because if I getting and funds.
I have one miscellaneous I could use there. Just a quick miscellaneous.
No, no
we're
way.
Walking now.
Yeah, I let them.
Yesterday, the FTE number 90 to 100 was thrown out as far as vacant seats that are funded. Did not set well with me, so we did a little looking on yesterday and this morning. We do have 92.5 vacancies right now, but the way the budgets have been managed, roughly 2/3 of them, there is no funding. They chose to spend money differently, so they were authorized, but there wouldn't be funding behind them at this point in the game unless there was some significant cuts that were unexpected. So really, I would say 30 to 35 would be the range of positions that if they were cut or attrited out would actually have funding behind them that would help next year. So I just wanted, I didn't want that 90 to 100 to stick in people's heads. Since a lot of them don't have money. They were in the budget, but they don't have money behind them.
It's only about 30.
30 to 35, without doing a deep dive, can't give you an exact, but we quickly went over. This is a sheet we gave you guys a while back. You know, Walter, if you would ask us to put the total on the bottom, so you won't have that sheet in your inbox, and it does have 92, so I can see where the number came from. But when we look budget by budget, there's just not funding for a lot of those. So
Do you know where, can you say disproportionately, are they in sheriff's office or detention or elsewhere? Do we-
they're all through, but for instance, 24 are listed in the sheriff's office.
24 out of 30 something?
Oh, no, 24 of the 92.
Okay, I'm thinking of the 30.
Oh, of the 30, they're onesies and twosies here and
Okay,
there.
here and
Like
there.
I know like the clerk has 3 of them that he's already had retirements or people leave this year. He's holding them open.
Okay.
Because he doesn't want to give out pink slips. And so those 3 positions are the way he's worked with us on his budget presentation. That's how he's solving for next year. So that's roughly 1s and 2s. Just around a lot of different departments. I wouldn't say there's any one large chunk. Probably, quite honestly, it would be juvenile has the biggest chunk right now. And they've been trying to hire, they've just not been able to. So she has quite a few over there that are funded. Yes, her is the biggest. I'm trying to find her. So just wanted to level set that one.
You're not here yet, you want to do the EPF?
Yeah, why don't you do the UPF?
Can I just ask a quick follow-up? So you're saying that they weren't, there's 92, but some of them don't have funding behind them.
They were in the budget, so the authority would be there, but like, for instance, per this sheet, there's 24 open positions in the sheriff's office. We know the sheriff is in the red. So if these positions were filled, it would go further in. These aren't positions that actually have. You know, like if you compare this to the sheet of where they are on their budget spending, if you have a bunch of open positions, but you've spent every dollar to date. You don't have available to spend them, because you're gonna go through the budget. So it's comparing these open positions to open budget. And we didn't put open, because we didn't approve FTEs in the budget. Some people have hired beyond what their budget is. And that's just the reality of where we are. Because we didn't put an FTE cap in the 26 budget. And we're going to be proposing doing that in the 27. Some of it is also the transfer from PeopleSoft to Workday and some of the cleanup involved in that. which I think we're pretty well cleaned up at this point, but there were some challenges. Some challenges there. Like public defense showed they could hire 16, and they do have some money in their salary benefits pot, but they've already spent their entire year's pot for extra counsel. So we know we know they have to keep hiring extra counsel. So we're gonna go so far over that one. They can't spend that money twice. You have to move money from the salary, but you want to cover the extra counsel. You can't hire both. You can't hire the employees here and the employees outside without going over your budget. So it's kind of putting that lens on it.
Yeah, you're kind of looking though at 2026, but in 2027. You could make adjustments.
You could, but you can't, if you've spent the money elsewhere in a way that's gonna continue on, you can't call it the savings because the money's already spent. So we're looking to spend it twice. I actually wouldn't say they are. We're making sure they aren't by looking at the numbers, because of the 90 open positions we show, there's not money for 2/3 of them.
Got it.
So if you cut the position, it has no budget impact, I don't say. We were actually we looked at the, we were thinking we should go through and freeze a bunch of these positions.
Right, for this year.
So the next time we show this list to you after the recess in August, it will change dramatically. Because we need to make sure the positions aren't showing, that gives the wrong impression.
Is there a kind of selective or targeted freeze within the departments that we oversee already?
Correct. But not the ones that pull up to second.
Okay, ready, Ron, can I bring up the PowerPoint? Yeah. Sorry if my throat's a little cracky today, but the smoke is wreaking havoc on me, yeah. So I'm here to talk about the public essential citing process, just to keep you informed about the process and where we are in the process right now. And what that is trying to look at an enormous amount of sites that has been evaluated by our consultant along with us on some criteria that we have that netted a large amount of sites. And so what we're trying to do is to whittle those sites down to a manageable number. And ACAN's grant will be next. Okay, yeah, all right. You're good. Find a seat.
There's some more seats at the end.
You can just all come down.
Sorry, no, I'm doing the EPF first. Okay. And so we've got some criteria that we're looking at that we're gonna share with you today, but I also need your approval to continuing to add criteria to it to get it down to a manageable number, which is about 10 sites to evaluate for the EPF committee. If it yields, more than 10, then we'll take a look at that, but you're generally in the last, all of the EPFs that have done before, it's been about 10 sites that we've evaluated. So we're gonna take the criteria that's already embedded in the EPF process, which includes the functional analysis. Next slide, Ron. And I'll remind you what the criteria is for the functional analysis, and it's just generalities. It's things that you would evaluate when we're trying to locate a site that makes sense to have a jail or a justice center. So it's one of those things that we'll be evaluating. And these are some of the criteria that we're going to be taking from the functional analysis to help us with that evaluation. We also, next slide, Ron, we'll be taking criteria from the qualitative analysis that has a little more specificity to it to help narrow down the range of those sites. And then lastly, the next slide, please, Ron. Here's the proposed screening criteria that we have right now. If we look at it, it's have access to public road and streets, be located in the site, which is either, can you pull this up? Cause I'm having a hard time. Either that or can you blow that up just a little bit, Ron? That's fine. So be located on a site that which is either 3 or 4 acres, which is consistent with what we had utilized before as criteria. And then 30 to 40 acres if it is in fact a rural site. Be served by public water, which is a functional factor. Be served by either public or community sewer system. Be served by the fire department or within a fire district. And then not located in areas designated as a steep slope, floodplain, or shoreline jurisdictions. And then not be located exclusively in an exclusive the residential zone district. So these are the criteria that we're gonna apply right now to the sites. We may need to apply more. And so what I'm here today is to tell you what we're starting with. And that to get your approval to apply more if necessary to run down the sites. Questions?
So have you already started looking with some of these criteria? That you said you've got lots of sites, so what have you started?
So we started basically with the two factors, the rural site acreage is one that we started, and it yielded an enormous amount of sites. So from that, we're whittling it down to other criteria. There is some additional criteria that we can look at, like next to schools and all those other things that we can apply, right? But the initial criteria, screening criteria is the one that.
So are any of these new from last time?
Morning, Commissioners. Sorry. So, Ron, if you could bring up the list of the 7 criteria again. So, what we initially planned was we implemented just the first 5 criteria. And so we had SCJ, our consultants, make a map using GIS for those. And that's what Mike is referring to, came back with hundreds of sites. So then to decrease it a little further, we discussed using the criteria to come up with 2 more factors. And so that's number 6 and 7. We just got the new map back from them today. And that did eliminate quite a few, but there are still dozens, around 75 potential sites all throughout the county. So we are going to need some more barriers to put in to help decrease it. And then Ron, if you could pull up that other that I sent you. And so these ones, we do know how many it would decrease by, and then we're exploring additional criteria that we haven't yet implemented on GIS, so we don't know.
We need the flexibility to apply more in order to get it down to a manageable level.
So your consultants already applied these, and so now you can see geographically.
Yes.
All right.
Right, the map is currently broken, but we're fixing it, but we were able to see in between.
So here's some additional criteria that we're looking at to apply in order to reduce the sites down. Okay.
Makes sense.
And so we just want to be, able to show you what criteria we're using and you get your approval for us to apply criteria as necessary within the EPF process to reduce the sites. Okay. Any other questions? I see Mr. Amacio here, so I'm sure that he has some comments that he would like to add.
Just to remind the board, when you set up the 2026 EPF committee, we delegated to them certain responsibilities to make a recommendation to the board. We did not delegate to them the initial basic criteria that Mike and Rebecca had showed you this morning. So that's why Mike and Rebecca have brought these back to you so you can tell us to move forward. We are going to move forward with these unless you tell us to the contrary. And then the next step, board members, will be once we come up with the approximately 10 sites, if you will, we will come back to the board and share these sites with you. You may want to add to it or subtract, and then we will take these to up to 10 sites and give them to your 2026 EPF committee for them to start the functional and qualitative and weighted analysis. So we're trying to dot the i's and cross the t's, because we know this particular program is very important to the entire community. I think it's important for the board to remember that this EPF process is for a new justice center. It's not for anything less than a justice center. Let me restate that. If you wanted to expand the jail, we would have to review whether or not the expansion, and that's a term of art, would require an EPF process, or we could simply move forward with it without going through a process. So that was the only clarification I wanted to mention to the board, Madam Chair. And I apologize, Mr. Sparber. I was watching the end and I came over late.
Yeah, I saw you running over here.
Oh, okay. I didn't run fast enough. Thank you, Madam Chair, for indulging me. Any questions that I can answer?
So just remind me, do you consider? Does the current site get considered in terms of the impact of changing or? You know, the current jail site, is it considered in the process?
I assume, Commissioner Waldrop, that the present jail site, when you apply those criteria, will be one of the sites that comes back in front of you to be aware of. So my response is it probably will be, but that's the whole process. While we're taking these general criteria and screening them out as Mr. Sparber has indicated, and I assume it will come back. I don't know why it wouldn't. Remember, we've got smaller sites and larger sites, so I assume it will come back.
And then will the committee be looking at, I forget how detailed does the committee get in terms of the cost to operate different sites? You know, just generally.
Yeah. Generally speaking, Commissioner, the cost to operate the sites comes in near the end of the process, near the weighted analysis after that. And this Board of County Commissioners will hold your own public hearing. And during that time frame, the cost of operating the facility will be a factor which you will take into consideration.
But there's no, this is just looking at sites
That is correct.
and maybe narrowing it down and looking at the considerations, but at the end of the process, we don't actually, not required to make a decision. It's just information for a future decision.
Commissioner, let me restate that just a little bit. The 2026 EPF committee that you have appointed will go through the functional analysis with regard to these up to 10 sites, the qualitative analysis of these 10 sites, and then the weighted analysis. At that point in time, the matter will come back to the Board of County Commissioners, and you will be sitting there with two hats on, the commissioner's hat and the applicant's hat, because we happen to be both in this case. And when you get to that point, you will ultimately, as the commissioners, rank the top 3 sites. And then as the applicant with the other hat, you will determine which of those 3 sites you want to select for the new justice centers, the case might be. So I hope I've answered your question, Commissioner Walter.
I just remember that in the terms of Whatcom County, I just remember that someone said that they went through the process, but then they ended up having to choose a different site after the process or
They
during
did
the
not go
process?
through. Cause they had like 3 different sites that they were looking at. They had
Oh.
not done. the-
You already
the
gone through the
process.
analysis.
They just had 3 that they had some
And
control
just-
over.
And Commissioner Walter, if your question is a good question, and I think, Madam Chair, you're aware of this. Whatcom County had a different process than Spokane County. In Whatcom County, each entity has their own EPF process. In Spokane County, all 13 cities and the county came up with a standard
Right.
process. So it's a little bit different, if you will, but it gets to the same end result. Are there any other questions, Madam Chair, that the board may have that I can answer with regard to what we're here today to ask the board to do? We're anxious to move this forward, And so we can start the process because we know we want to get this done in a timely fashion. But we want to dot the i's and cross the t's so that anyone looking at the process feels very confident that we'd handle it correctly.
Just that last screen where you were looking at some additional criteria, do you have, is that in the packet?
No, we can send it.
Okay,
We just-
I'd like to look at that further.
My only question is, well, how did the consultant kind of define floodplain in the exclusion? I'd just like to learn more about that, but we can chat about that. Clearly, you're gonna need more to narrow it down anyway, so that's my curiosity.
Right now, they're just looking at the FEMA 100-year flood zones as the eliminating factor, and then they've put in a request to building and planning to get more information, so we can bring that to us to get it.
It's already predetermined, it's not the consultants determining what a floodplain is. Great.
Yes.
Yeah, there could be the case where part of a parcel is touching it and not the rest of it, or there are mitigating factors, and those we won't fully eliminate without bringing to you.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I think we've got some direction and we're gonna move forward with these basic criteria and then come back with the board with hopefully up to 10 sites so we can move forward.
And the second, we're gonna have the resolution on the committee.
Correct, for the two county committees, yes. And we also will have a public facing website page that comes up, that will be publishing this week so that everybody can go and get the information that they might want.
Yeah, Chris, they help us out when it's really nice.
Great,
So quite a lot of information.
thank you.
Okay, next. Just kind of set the stage. It's been a long time since you've heard about the waiver 1115 and the progress that's been made on it. So I asked Eric Green, who's the project manager, along with the staff from the jail and our new medical provider to come over and give an update. So as soon as they come in. Come on in. Wonderful. Okay, yep, and I'm gonna move down to her. You can have this seat. It's a little warmed up for you, hopefully. Sit over here. Is this one okay? Right. Over there. This is swing. Got it. Smoke. So I'll have them introduce themselves and who you have with you, Eric and Darren.
Yeah, so Eric Green, project manager, that's been setting up the 1115 for the county, and then Lieutenant Darren Lehman, oversight of 1115 with detention services.
Synovia Rivas, I'm RN with Medico Special Projects. I've been helping out with 1115 for several other facilities as well.
All the way at the back of the room.
I'm Crystal Lucas. I'm the health service administrator for Medico at Detention Services.
Chief Don Hooper. Good morning.
Cool. This has kind of been a long road, so we're here to give an update today. Up there, you'll see kind of how the slides are gonna transition. Just a quick reminder of what the program encompasses. So basically it's Medicaid waiver 1115, where incarcerated individuals that are eligible for Medicaid will get 90 days of pre-release services. That includes case management and then treatment for opioid and substance use disorder. Then this program, pilot program for the state, expires end of June 2028 as far as the grant funding. Slide. Just a reminder of the timeline. So the state split it into 3 cohorts, cohort 1, 2, and 3. We've been a part of all 3 cohorts. And we'll get into that in a minute. Slide. All right. So where we started, Spokane County joined the 1115 effort as part of cohort 1. Early on in 2025, The state requirements were largely unknown at that point. There were several meetings with the state where they had released a policy and operations guide. Our requirements were really vague and nobody really knew the direction that the state wanted to go. At the same time that was going on, the jail was in process of an RFP for renewal of the medical provider contract. So that kind of slowed things down early on. Moving into the first part of 2025, the state finally came out with a series of webinars to make expectations known. The medical provider contract was eventually signed and executed. And then we began talks with NAFCARE at the time on what their participation level was going to be at 1115 and what they could do to help stand this up. In the process of all that, we had some medical provider implementation. You forward a slide. Direction. More back. Thanks. We had some implementation stuff going on, and then the state recommended that detention services move to a cohort 2 with the premise that essentially cohort 1 was meant for facilities that were already set up and ready to bill. They entered negotiations for RFP for a clearinghouse to funnel the claims through. Those didn't wrap up with the state till November when they finally stood up. And they recommended that we move to cohort 2. After moving to cohort 2, the 180-day notice came from NAFCARE that they were terminating services, at which point we entered an emergency RFP, which ultimately brought us through the rest of last year. And then that contract was executed with Medico at the beginning of this year. Slide. With that, the contract started February 1st. There's been some transition that has occurred, as well as implementing the new services. We did get our required readiness assessment submitted to the state on time. But with the contract execution, we ended up deciding to move to cohort 3 because it just wasn't realistic to try to go live in January of 2026 when medical provider transition hadn't started yet. Following the submission of that, we got conditional approval to go live from the HCA, which turned into full approval in June. Medico has agreed to stand up 1115 services for us with county having oversight. And then we are still working through some of the intricacies of that, but we did go live on July 1. We have had ongoing discussions with Medico as far as standing up services. That program was implemented in, what was it, May 1st, which ties into our 1115 waiver. Program continues to grow and be refined. Some of the speed bumps are reached along the way. MCO contracts are ongoing, which is our one barrier at this point, which I'll get into in a minute. It's a barrier, but it's not a barrier. And staffing recruitment is ongoing. There's some positions with Medico that aren't filled. Work positions are filled that current staff are being used to fill some of those gaps in the interim. We do have a county program administrator that is slotted to start in September, which has been a slow process due to background checks and some of those things. Slide. Ongoing challenges, obviously the staffing, as I already alluded to, and then the MCO contracts. So the issue we ran into was juvenile court went live last year. And they executed contracts with 5 MCOs. 3 of the 5 contracts were county level contracts. That didn't distinguish between the departments. And then those 3 MCOs that have those county level contracts were not willing to separate into separate contracts to differentiate between juvenile court and detention services. And the remaining 2 were standalone or are going to be standalone contracts. Been working through the process of that, figuring out the best path forward as far as what we receive for legal recommendations. Slide. Current status, we've gone live as of July 1st. Medico will be billing on the county's behalf. Spokane County will maintain program administrator and oversight. Managed care organization discussions continue to be ongoing. We are making forward progress on those. Medications are billed point of sale, so that is completely separate from the MCO contracts and would be an immediate return. Staffing continues to be advertised until filled. Program implementation refinement are ongoing. Slide. That's all I have. Anybody has any questions?
Eric, on the contracts that you're working on for the MCO, is Nate McCorkle helping you with those? Okay.
Yes, it's been integral to those conversations.
So which staff have been the most challenging to fill? Is it more of the social service side or some of the MAT treatment, or what's the challenges?
The MAT treatment part of it, we got up and running and was filled in May. So that part of it, we're up and running. On the positions we have in the contract with Medico, up to 9 positions. And we determined that we didn't want to fill all of them with Go Live because we don't know what the capacity is, and I don't want to be paying for a position that we're not utilizing in a capacity. So we're rolling it out. I think we agreed on 5 positions initially. Right now, 3 of those 5 are filled. We have an enrollment coordinator, a case manager, one of the MAs positions filled. Still working on 2 more, the billing component of it, we don't have there yet. Though we're not billing at this point anyway. So that isn't contingent on being able to start the program. And we have a year that we can bill back on.
Okay.
So that gives us some grace period there. So we'll get those positions filled, but when Eric speaks to the core positions, we do have those and we can be up and running. One of the things we're working on right now to be able to provide some of those services and get billed back was Provider One right now. And there was some logistics there on whether we do that at the county level, at medical level. We've got that ironed out. It's going to be at Medico's level. The county has access to Provider One, but we weighed the pros and cons of who it'd be best with, and ultimately we land on Medico's going to get set up in Provider One. So that once
That's the data system or
To enroll and to look up eligibility.
yeah, which is going to be used by those enrollment coordinators and the case managers.
Do we have an estimate of the percentage of inmates or number that would be eligible to receive services under this waiver?
We're currently evaluating that right now with that case manager. So that's one of the capacities we're using in her in right now, being that we don't have that Provider One enrollment completed. So she's kind of going through that, going back through ones that have already been booked and released, and then one as they come in and watching that. Conversations today, people who are in custody 90 days plus, I think a good percentage of those would be eligible, and it's 234 as of today. But not a true
Already
accurate.
over 90 days.
Yes. And some of the, requirements or timelines around 1115 is the first 30 days of incarceration services can be covered, but it's really the projected release date, pre-release, within 90 days. So that's why we focus on that 90 day.
If someone's anticipated to be there for 45 days, they can still take advantage of the services, correct?
Yeah.
It's up to 90.
And there's some requirements that the HCA mandates for everyone that comes into the facility. So there's certain assessments, SUD, health. And then if they choose to have the care coordination when they release, that's a completely different story. That doesn't impact billing or the services that we provide while they're here until they get their release date. So if they're here, say 60 days and they don't have a release date yet, you can bill for that. But then once you get the release date, you update that and then it's the last 90. So it's kind of that gray area in the beginning until they get that release date. Helpful.
Which can be challenging for us. We don't get a lot of that information. Our sentence population, I looked at it a couple weeks ago and it was in the 60s out of, just under 800. So we don't know a lot of these release dates, sometimes almost till the day of. So coordinating some of that services is tough, but we're gonna have to kind of triage that, look at other systems and compare them and make a best guess on those situations.
All up, so up to 5 new staff, that what you were saying, or core staff?
Yes, 5 on the initiation of this, and then we have additional 4 built into the contract that we could, if the capacity grew to a point that dictated it, we could have it. It's doubling up some of those positions, case managers, and billing coordinators.
And how do you see the work of the case management and the services kind of aligning with the current mental health department in the jail?
They're kind of standalone in that aspect. Our mental health department right now is doing more of a triage of people in crisis right now. So they're not doing a lot on the case management front. And I think the board's aware we did have case management component of it tied to 5177. It was a little over a year ago, and we no longer have those positions. So case management is minimal, and those that are highly acute are the ones that mental health would support. But we've been in conversations on that, how that looks and how they refer back and forth. And it is on the case management, it's an RN through Medico. And if there's a mental health aspect of it, I see mental health kind of supporting that, but not taking on that full workload.
So it's really the triage versus the reentry.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. Which really reentry case management, not happening a whole lot on our end for detention services.
So I guess I would say for me, it's, having lobbied to get the waiver. I mean, we thought it was supposed to be taking care of the costs. Yes, so it's kind of frustrating that HCA has changed how they're looking at it, and they're looking at it the reentry instead of, we're still bearing the costs for these people as they enter into the system, which the whole point was to have those costs carried on by the insurance providers that they had prior to getting into the system.
Absolutely, I agree with you on that part of it, and sitting in some of those meetings and talking with Zenobia, who has a lot of experience in other facilities in this place, and what facilities are seeing is the system is pretty complex. The environment does change, and we're trying to keep up on that. And some of the facilities aren't billing until in one case a year later. They're not able. They're going back billing a year later because they're trying to keep up with all these changes and requirements of the program.
Yeah, it just seems like the HCA is putting more barriers on it than, it should be. I mean, when we were lobbying, it should be as simple as, someone going to the hospital, you provide your insurance information.
Right.
When you come into the jail system, you should be providing your insurance information, and if you have insurance, it should be getting billed appropriately. I mean, we're still fighting for. This is just the mental health side, but honestly, it's now just the reentry side. It's not even the mental health side.
Right.
And we're trying to fight still to get the medical side, because to have good mental health and reentry, you need to have good health.
Absolutely.
So so that's part of what we're still fighting to get, and so why our state chose to only go with the mental health side is very frustrating. I think that's, like we talked about yesterday, once again, kind of unfunded mandates. I mean, because they could be going for all of that and chose only to go for a piece of it, and now even not the piece we thought it was going to go for. It's just going for reentry. So the state is not doing their job based on the federal law that they could be doing.
It's comforting for me to hear that from you because I don't get exposed to that aspect of it. But I've encountered Eric, Zenobia, across the board, we've all encountered our frustrations with those challenges, you know, and we work through them, but that you're hearing and seeing it at that level.
Well, and it was the state, our state chose only to go for the mental health waiver, where other states are choosing to do all of it.
Oh,
Yeah, which is what the federal law allows.
yeah, so it'll be limiting for us in that aspect until that gets changed.
So is there much that we would see it other than on the prescription side? Is that really the only advantage? Advantages to the people, I understand that, but from a cost perspective for the county, it's really just then the prescriptions.
I think that's where we see our most return with the most return for the littlest amount of effort, if I could say, you know, that that's one of the easiest ones to target. It is a big cost for us, you know, we're looking at between $80,000 and $100,000 a month on that. And you know, if you can even make a quarter on that, and we've targeted some of the bigger meds too, you know, through there that cost the county quite a bit. So again, it is about the person and getting them the help they need, but also, you know, getting them connected with the services and Medicaid to help support that.
There are a lot of medical services that are billable, and so I'm finding that out. I'm helping billing at another site and diving into that. So there is a great, but it's kind of a gray area. It's like, okay, well, will you cover this or will you want? They don't really provide a lot of tangible items to go like, oh, I can bill for this. You're just sort of like, is this allowed? And you know, roll the dice and submit a bill and hope that see what gets paid. But Nisqually, I started there with cohort 1 and they just submitted their first bill last Friday. So you'll see. The biggest recuperation was in the ER visits and the medications. And now they're hoping to go back over a year to bill and recuperate something to pay for the services that the positions that they brought on.
Thank you. Yeah, I know you guys are doing a great job. I'm frustrated with the state for not doing everything they can to be really reasonable costs.
They commonly make the statement that they're building the plane as they fly it.
Yeah.
So I think they're trying to figure out how this looks and works too.
Yeah, now with WASAC, we were very definitely lobbying for the whole health. You know, which is what the feds then allowed for, but then the state.
So following up on that, what, and maybe can't be talked about if there's some legal issues, but I guess I'm confused about the MCOs. If they already have a contract with juvenile, what does that matter?
In
I mean,
our
they have contracts with our community services department too.
Absolutely. In discussing it with legal, our legal representation, the preferred way was to have standalone contracts with detention services. Mainly because when, with juvenile court, they entered in those contracts. Detention services has a much bigger footprint in that, you know, where you're looking at a 20 to 30 population compared to is it meeting the needs of the jail? And if one were to separate or go a different direction, would it handcuff the other one to it? We kind of hit a stalemate on that, tax ID things, DBAs, all this was thrown out there where some were able to differentiate the two. So we're going to have an amendment kind of lining out any of those things that would be different with detention services in that particular MCL. We got it nailed down pretty well. And we'll be presenting that to the board here pretty soon, where we'll have 3, as Eric said, 3 that are going to be amendments and then 2 that will be standalone contracts. And it's just, again, allowing us to be able to bill for the services. So they're pretty boilerplate for the most part, and you have to have it to be able to bill it out. It's pretty standard across the state.
By the way, the 3 contracts that require the amendments, as far as those 3 MCOs are concerned, we already have a contract in place. So we're just talking about contract.
And you guys work Justin Johnson worked with you on helping with those MCOs contracts.
He did, and he's a great resource of information on that, because he's been through it several times himself.
Yeah, so I think it was beneficial. Yeah. To make sure he was part of it he's done that before, so just for our awareness that he worked with it.
Yes, and he was a good gauge to make sure we were headed down the right path with him.
And Commissioner Brooks, kind of brief, just really quick update, kind of related, kind of not. We were informed last week, the grant that we were awarded from DSHS for that clinical intervention specialist and all the staff related to that, we were informed last Monday, I believe, a week ago, that they were putting on hold, putting on pause. So it was about $750,000 due to the state's own budget issues. So we're same thing, just informed last Monday. The board had signed the contract the week before on Tuesday. We sent it off to them Wednesday. By Friday, they were looking for us to put it on pause. So don't know any other updates other than we put our internal positions on pause as well, but that was $750,000. As soon as they got it, it looks like within a day or two, they put it on pause.
They're projecting maybe to have some more information back to us in fall. So we're still hopeful that that'll go through. They tell us, or they relate to us, that it's an important project for the state. In budgets, sometimes dictate other things.
So in that case, so since this is basically reimbursement because we've got to provide the service and then get reimbursed for it. I guess the reimbursement's coming from the MCA, so we have a better feeling that we're gonna get reimbursed. I mean, with, as we know, with all the reentry, that's a lot of work, people and.
Yes. So yeah, once we get to that level to be able to, we will seek reimbursement for all those services that we'll be providing.
Right.
That are allowed. I wish I could give you a better idea of what that looks like. It's tough because I don't even know, as Commissioner Jordan said, who is even eligible. We're gathering that data now.
But then we're gonna have to be paying the bills.
Correct.
Not sure we're gonna get reimbursed on some of that.
Or it would be quite delayed.
Elaine, it looks like I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, so I'm just saying that would be part of the reason why we would need additional set asides in our mental health fund balance, sales tax fund balance to account for these costs, because we don't know what's gonna get reimbursed, and there's that leg. So now we've got an initial leg that we don't have cash for.
Cash flow.
Using up funds that we. So now setting aside for the funds, so, okay.
Was the information we got from Nisqually Jail was that the pharmacy itself, we weren't paying the bill ahead of time and they would actually bill directly from Diamond Pharmacy? Was that so we wouldn't have to pay that? That's why we think the pharmacy costs close to $100,000 a month was probably our low hanging fruit. That's our initial recoup. Is that we'd heard maybe even up close to 80%?
Yes.
What I would say to that, though, to kind of qualify that, is we have a cost pool that was built into the medical contract of 1.2 million. And those costs come out of that. So it wouldn't necessarily come back to us again. It would just never get billed against the cost pool. So it's hard to say it is money saved, but again, it's going into that cost pool that has already been kind of pre-built into the contract. If we come in under that amount, though, it does get credited to us.
And it all hinges on the stay, on the time they're here. So that's kind of the big, in order to recoup the money from the pharmacy. So if they have a release date, 30 days after they get here, you can, you could have received the funds for the pharmacy that was 30 days and then the last 90. So if they're here a year, that, time frame within, you're liable for that cost.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You guys are doing a great job, so I'm not saying that. No, they just.
Great.
Okay.
I lost that. Oh, you already got us.
More coming. I'm gonna go over affordable housing permit program. Right now, there's a rough draft outline with some stuff for open discussion. The summary of the current outline is that we would be putting party order on the qualifying affordable housing for building permits. Essentially, that would be those putting them to the front of the line in the queue when they come in. There's also discussion on deferral, waiving, and or deferral and waiving or reduction of permit fees in general for that. Look on the first page, I wrote the summary, general limitations of expedition, which is outside agencies. It's part of the legal process such as SEPA. Then for considerations, it goes into fee removal, deferral, reduction will create a loss or temporary loss of revenue stream. And that can be counterproductive for prioritization of limits. And then other consideration being abandoned projects, fee collection, and how much that has its own cost and tracking. That's on the affordable housing repair program process outline document. The other colorful document, see the affordable housing fee deferral. This is the checklist and what qualifies for the fee deferral and priority. It covers in summary pretty much every program we could find. I worked with housing and community development in creating this. And for kind of a rough outline of how the procedures would go is also listed on that affordable housing program process outline. Which outlines a rough draft of steps the building department would take to accomplish this program. One being the third document you have, which is an example from Bellevue, which is an agreement so we can get these if we do for. We have to make a modification to match our codes, but it's just to have an idea of similar processes somewhere else.
Thanks, Jordan, for working on this. Question about the affordability requirements. Would a Habitat for Humanity or Community Frameworks home ownership product qualify under those?
It is intended to.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that through George's department, funding goes to those types of programs, right? And so this is coming from what they use as kind of a basic criteria of affordability.
Correct. Anything in their portfolio would qualify, and then things even outside their portfolio would qualify. It also would include a discretionary exception. So say there's something that we didn't see, that we feel that it does qualify, we could even grab that one. Essentially, the process is you would take in the documentation they use for all their affordable housing funding, similar, or a program they're in. You would forward it to George's team.
They would give a recommendation on if they qualified, and then we would submit the program.
We that we've received in the past year qualify for something like this.
George's estimate was about between 2 and 5 projects, which that could be multiple buildings, like say an apartment complex can be one project with multiple buildings.
When I was at the National Association of Counties meeting this past week, I went to a workshop where they were talking about ways to, you know, what you could do as a local government to support more housing in general, you know, getting through your process, but also affordable housing. And the person that was on the panel was saying that like the giving priority or expediting is something even more important than like you know, cutting fees or reducing, because just being able to move projects through more quickly, giving folks that sense of, oh, that will be reviewed within X amount of days is really helpful. You know, when they were doing their financing and so anyway, I think that that's really something that's even do you have a sense of like of a number of days you can tell people? Or I know you have all these outside agencies that also have to review.
That's the challenge. If you look at the building permit process, back part, it's quite a few steps. So I kind of didn't want to go too much into the details, but I'm actually happy to. We would send out like an email with high priority listed and let everyone know this program is going and we'd like their participation, but ultimately we can't force participation. Timeline for departments within Spokane County is easy to set like a date or a number. But ultimately, depends where the site is on how many agencies manage to set a permit, and then that timeline can be. There's no way to give a full timeline on. Like an estimate.
I think this is a great idea. I would like to see at least at a minimum, the priority and the fee deferral. I'd be open to looking at reducing or waiving as well. And so I think this is a good start. I appreciate the work on it. Is looking at the examples of other agencies. I was reminded of a comment Commissioner French made in a previous meeting about like a permit concierge or something that you saw in some Idaho community.
Yeah, Twin Falls.
Yeah, so I really think we should look at something like that. I'd really like to see a permit dashboard. We've talked about that for quite a while to kind of bring some additional light on the actual timelines. I get it's complicated. I know every permit may have unique issues, but I just think that those pieces as well could come alongside something like this to not just say we're prioritizing, but actually show it and get a real handle on the timeframes. So I'd like to see us go even further, but I think it's a good start.
I also could give an update on the dashboard too. I do have looking at a mock draft end of this week, potentially, or the next week. And we've actually made quite a bit of headway on. This is just an initial. I got 2025 and 2026 pretty good data that I feel confident for issued permits and their quantity for dwelling units specific, and the categories they land under. So making quite a bit of headway on the funding side of things. I think if this few months we'll be seeing some really good data. So the problem is, you go back before 2025. Things have been moved around so many times that starts getting like spaghetti. I describe it, where you're trying to figure out how to get all the information and grab that data, your specific averages and stuff like that. But getting pretty close on full data. That's around. This is an initial kind of like rough draft. some initial stuff, but I haven't working for submitted projects, just haven't fully vetted anything yet.
Is there just 2 copies? Or is it- oh,
Yeah,
it's
I had a feeling we were gonna talk about dashboards, so I was like, well, I have.
Thought it would come up.
So I went, well, I have some rough stuff that's kind of getting close.
Need more information, Diane. Can you help send that out?
Oh, I see, like this is by different type, like manufactured home, residence, duplex, okay.
You'll see in certain columns, even there's some blank, and that's because we've had the reporting codes in the past kind of mess. And as we start using those consistently, the data gets more consistent. So it's good, it's accurate, but it could be better.
It'd be nice to get like a baseline of what our timeline is for certain types of projects to get from when the application comes in complete or whatever the right starting point is to when it's finalized, and then also look at whether are there any resources available for staffing a kind of person to help shepherd things through various agencies. So I'm hoping we get a briefing on some of this when it's ready.
I guess for me, I mean, this is obviously a first look. But I want the data to show. Is it gonna help? Is it, you know, what? Yeah, so what our current timelines are, what would this do? Would it shorten the time? Like, you know, what's a normal fee? So we're gonna look at recurring fees, what those fees are. I'm looking at it as we set fees, we know then somebody else is paying for those fees. So, to, you know, weigh all of that. To look at that, what that would be for me.
Yeah.
Reflect. Work on paper, but I need the data and the information to show what would we be showing that we're, you know, giving up and asking others to kind of compensate for it.
I think, some general for that topic. The data for how we do averages for probably how fast it comes in to how long it's out the door. It's hard to say for every project without knowing a parcel specific, because it'll vary so significantly depending on that limitation I have on there for the outside agencies. I'll try to put something together of, you know, the idea is put it first in line. How much does that save? Now, that may be hard to quantify, but I'll try to work on something.
But if it kind of not timeline of when our will be, if we're gonna go first line, how, but you know, if we agree to, it makes it helpful to get them, you know, going sooner, but there's other projects that are going soon. I get constituent comments all the time from the, you know, Brenda's calling your office saying, what's up with this permit? So I mean, so that's what I just want to make sure that our permit process is flowing smoothly enough to make sure that we can accommodate this.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There's a number of folks that reach out when there's a permit that they feel is held up for one reason or another. And sometimes it's on their end, sometimes it is on our end. But, you know, I was glad to hear Commissioner Waldriff said at the conference that folks talked about time being more valuable than that. And I know when we took when you came in and we had a discussion about a month ago on this, that was one thing that I said, when I hear from constituents, it's not the cost of the fee they're upset about, it's how long it's taking to get what they've paid for. It's the time that means more. I've had builders, like, I mean, everything from developers to individuals that are building their own private residence that have said, they're like, I'll pay twice the cost if I can just get the permit in a reasonable time. So I think in many cases with construction, it's the time is more valuable. I guess it goes back to the old, you know, time is money. And when they're waiting on a permit, I mean, that costs them more money. And so it's the time that's more valuable to them. Usually is what I'm hearing.
And just so people understand, this is only in the incorporated area of Spokane County. This does not affect any of the cities the city's got our own processes that we're doing. And I guess I want to know how many cities are doing affordable housing. You know, fee waiver and permit processing. Than in the county that are already doing that.
I think this. Did the city of Spokane do a deferment?
Yep, City of Spokane's fully permanent.
They probably have more
you-
project
you
than
all,
we do as well
Most of the major cities have a program similar.
in the affordable.
To the city of Spokane Valley.
I guess saw anything for Spokane Valley. All.
Yeah, but I mean.
So they have the land, they do have the surplus property ordinance in place. And they've used that. So they might be using other strategies.
Can I ask you, you said deferment, so is that they pay later?
Yeah,
Or
right.
a total
At
waiver?
this-
Okay, so
yeah.
it's not a waiver of the fee.
No.
And
It's
this
just
is
a
discussing
deferral.
multiple options we
Yeah.
could go down. The tactics have been reduction, waiving, deferral.
Yeah.
That's the kind of three
No, but
standards.
in reference to the cities, you said that happen. Theirs are
City of
deferral,
Spokane-
not waivers,
City
correct?
of Spokane is doing deferral.
And this is Bellevue here. It's doing a deferral. Or they're doing a reduction.
They're doing a reduction.
Okay.
I believe Puyallup's doing a waiving. The example is from Bellevue's, because if you're doing a deferral, this is an agreement to get your.
Oh, this is
money
a good
back.
example.
Yeah, this is an example how you could write up a deferral, sign and record it, and then that's how you get your money into that. It does not pursue through all the way to the finish line.
Oh, I see.
Or revises outside of program boundaries.
I think we could, in conjunction with this, to have George give us a presentation on, kind of how many affordable housing projects are coming forward and how many affordable housing units are being produced by it. Just kind of give a look back to then see what the future could be.
Yeah, I can talk with George and do a presentation together for generally. How many we'll likely to see and what kind of
Yeah, kind of in the last year timeframe, how many projects have come forward, how many, because it just has to be a certain percentage that's affordable versus not. And so how many then units have been produced in the past year?
Has the housing authority come in? For a permit on that senior housing up by the Y area yet? They got that grant through us, well, through the county, they got the grant dollars from the state to help put in some water infrastructure, I think.
I don't believe offhand they
Yeah,
have.
okay, that would be one that would potentially be coming.
Yeah, I haven't heard you use that one specifically.
Probably still working on their portfolio of funding.
I can check back in on that and then make sure I don't have an application for that.
But that's where George could, to your point, Commissioner, George would know, like, what are the ones that we've already funded through our different grant programs that are in the queue, so to speak. Maybe not, you haven't gotten the permit request yet, but we've already allocated funding through our different grant dollars.
And that's where I can see it being pretty streamlined because George's group already a lot of times has all this information already. So then when we refer it to them, they could already know, yeah, that's good to go, or they can even send it with the check that's already completed, yeah, that's good to go.
And I think George would know projects that we're not funding, because some of them are funded by government that are doing affordable housing options. So I think he would know what some of those would be too. So I'd like to know kind of the gap, the answer, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, yeah, that's why we've especially made sure that George is involved in the checklist, because that's definitely not as much my area expertise and definitely.
I think the checklist looks good. So would the next step be then having George provide some more info on past and future projects, just so we have a sense of how many permits we're talking about?
Right, and kind of what we think a timeline would be normally versus expediting it, and what other cities are doing within Spokane County already. Thank you, appreciate it. Mr. Jordan, Mr. Walter.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. We are here today to propose to the board for consideration temporary pause on permits for large load data centers within the county. So I was planning to give an overview of the proposal, and then I'll turn it over to Commissioner Waldorf for anything I may have missed, and then hopefully that way we can see if there's any feedback from the board. The key point I just wanted to make is that a temporary 9-month moratorium will give us the time to really understand the potential impacts of these facilities before they're built and make sure that responsible rules are in place first. That's my goal. So just wanted to start off by saying this issue really came strongly to my attention, as it did for many people in the county last month. But many of us may have missed that back in March of 2025, Kootenai County commissioners over in Idaho unanimously passed a temporary 6-month moratorium. And at the end of that moratorium, they emerged with some local rules that over there prohibit data centers above the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer and impose a variety of conditions for such facilities built elsewhere in the county, including some rules addressing water efficiency and transparency. So that's just worth noting. That's what our neighbors are doing across the border. And then fast forward to a couple weeks ago, June of this year, it was reported that Avista had entered into the MOU that we heard about to provide up to 500 megawatts of energy to a single large load data center facility that was planned for construction in the region. And the scale of that kind of surprised a lot of people in terms of the energy demand, including myself. And that could be the equivalent of half of the entire current power load of the county as a whole. So it's a big deal for apparently a single facility. So that's another key point, is that when it comes to large load or hyperscale facilities, we're not just talking about a garden variety industrial building. The resource demands for these facilities, depending on design and the specifics, could be really unprecedented in recent history of our county. So for some additional context, I learned from Avista that currently there's only one customer in the entirety of the county with an electrical load demand of over 25 megawatts. And again, the scale we're apparently talking about, or that Avista is talking about, is 500 megawatts for one facility. So over the past few weeks, as I'm sure other board members have, I've heard from hundreds and hundreds of constituents who are very concerned about what this may mean for their electricity bills in the future. So energy affordability is one concern I'm hearing about, as well as water efficiency as it relates to the aquifer. There's concerns about noise and some other issues. So a significant public outcry followed the reporting. As we heard, I think my office probably received over 1,000 emails with probably a 10-to-1 ratio, at least, of kind of negative or concerned. So as we know, Avista announced on June 12th, it was pausing processing for these large energy requests in response to the community concerns. And they issued a statement calling for a coordinated planning effort with local governments. So since that time, some other jurisdictions in the state have enacted temporary moratoriums. Of course, the city of Spokane most recently, the Snohomish County Council voted 5-0 on a bipartisan basis to enact a 6-month moratorium. I just saw about yesterday, apparently the city of Pasco in Tri-Cities passed a moratorium 6-0 on their city council. So I believe a temporary pause in issuing permits for these large load facilities is needed because without it, there's no way to preserve the status quo while we look at updating the rules that are in place today. So a permit application could come through the door at any time. And if the application is complete, it may be really too late at that point to do anything differently. So what am I proposing? An approximately 9-month moratorium that would expire 20 days after the end of the 2027 legislative session. That is the 20 days after, I believe, is the governor's deadline to sign bills that come out of the session. So I think that time frame would give us the ability to have our own rules ready, but also to be able to adjust if the state takes any action. I do believe there will be bills proposed on this topic again this year. The moratorium I'm proposing would only apply to large load data centers of greater than 25 megawatts of electrical demand, of which there are none currently in the county at that scale. We would hold a public hearing. The moratorium resolution would direct staff to develop proposed rules for us that define data centers in our code, ensure that the public's voice is heard in permitting decisions by making it clear that a conditional use permit is required to build one, address appropriate locations or zoning for such facilities, and then address some of the power and water concerns as well. So I'm hopeful that we can use the time from a pause to engage in that coordinated planning effort with Vista and other local governments, study the potential impacts, including potential economic benefits in construction and other jobs, determine what basic safeguards that fit the county could be in place. And then just backing up a tiny bit to the timing, I certainly personally believe the legislature should pass a bill this session to make it clear that the utility ratepayer should not subsidize the facilities for infrastructure or power demand. And I'm encouraged that's what Avista is saying their position is. That's what data center developers seem to be saying. But I think the public needs to be able to count on that with a clear rule. So I just wanted to point out a few things going on in other places. The governor created a data center work group that released some recommendations late last year. They did recommend such ratepayer protections be adopted in the state. And then if you look at some other states like Texas, you may have seen that Governor Abbott of Texas put out an executive order last month that requires data centers to pay their own way. So that's just one example. So Governor Abbott in Texas said on June 10th, quote, data centers must operate in ways that reduce costs for residential electricity customers, do not drain water needed for our communities, and take into consideration the needs of our neighborhoods. I think that's a pretty good statement. So we'll see what the legislature does. But if they don't come through with new policy in 2027, we could be ready with our own rules. Last couple things I wanted to note. It gives you a kind of clear indication of where the county is on this issue. Our zoning code, if you look at it, it's pretty long, it's pretty detailed. It defines a lot of different types of land uses and the rules around those uses. So a couple select examples, it defines adult entertainment establishments, airstrips, auto junk and salvage yards, beekeepers, cemeteries, community transit centers, controlled plant growth structures, inherently dangerous reptiles. So there's a lot of things in our zoning code, but we don't have a definition of data center specifically. So I think a pause will give us a chance to ensure responsible rules in place. I would ask for your support for it. I would ask us to engage in regional planning conversation, and I would turn it over to Commissioner Waldron for anything else.
As always, very thorough, Commissioner Jordan. So yes, since Avista put the pause on its negotiations with apparently a large load data center you know, Avista said that it was seeking broader policy and community conversation and alignment. So since then, you know, I've heard from many community members and businesses about data centers. And I think there's a desire for Spokane County to engage with people, make sure we do our due diligence, consider infrastructure, water, energy, land use, noise, economic development impacts before any such development might occur in our county. So that's why a moratorium, I think, would be a good idea to allow us to have that community conversation and do our due diligence. When I was at the County National Association of Counties annual meeting this last week, there was a lot of discussion and there was a big workshop on data centers, and we heard from different communities and states and counties. And you know, many folks across many county leaders are enacting moratoriums so they can put their rules into place. This is a checklist that I just made copies of from NACO, and there's more resources out there. I just thought I'd pass it around, but it's just kind of a checklist of things you might want to consider in your county, like infrastructure, land use, zoning, water. I mean, quite frankly, I don't think I know enough about data centers. I think we have a lot to learn, and the technology is moving really quickly. And so I want to make sure that, you know, Spokane County has the information we need to make responsible decisions. And that's why I think a moratorium is important, just to give us the time to research, learn more, and have those policy conversations with Avista so we understand what Avista is doing, and make the best policy decisions for Spokane County. So I'd love to have a discussion about that and open to feedback.
So, this is the full document from NACO, in case you wanted it, because it's a lot more than just a spreadsheet of things that you need to address, but the lot of conversation around data centers. A lot of it is inaccurate, misinformed, or outdated. The East Coast has been the lead on the data center industry, and there clearly was some mistakes that they made. They passed a lot of the costs for infrastructure onto the ratepayers, and that was wrong. They did not take appropriate precautions with regard to their water. And some of the data centers were high consumers of water to cool. And, you know, that was maybe misappropriate or misguided, but we've learned a lot over the last couple of years. Just like any new industry, there are going to be hiccups along the way. And what you want to do is you want to learn from those that have gone before you, and then incorporate those protections into what you do for your community. And so that's what I've been involved in for the last couple of years, because I've had multiple developers of data centers approach me about doing something on the West Plains, and they have not been able to meet all of the metrics with regard to power or water or a variety of other things. And Commissioner Kearns has been in the same situation. I know that Commissioner Cooney Brooks is also very familiar with data centers and the importance of them for our economy, for our nation. In fact, it's been suggested that to be against data centers is to be anti-American, because we know, and the FBI is currently engaged in investigations where China and Russia have engaged in activities to oppose data centers because they do not want the United States to take a lead from an economic standpoint with regard to data center development. So we have, between Commissioner Kearns and I, already drafted a petition particular outline for an ordinance to be pursued, and we've talked to our legal counsel and a planning director about the timeliness of being able to implement a zoning ordinance to address some of these concerns. And we can understand that this could be something that could be addressed by the end of August. So we don't need 9 months to develop regulations. We already have a good understanding about the impacts of what these data centers mean, and also what we can do to protect the community and allow for this critical infrastructure to be developed here in Spokane County. I find it interesting that I'll be specific here with regard to the Democratic Party. Here you have Senator Cantwell and Senator Murray's leading an effort to support a multi-company project for developing a tech center on the West Plains. Senator Cantwell was lead in securing $70 million for that tech center, which is going to include a data center. Then in the last legislative session, we had Representative Ormsby present a bill to allow Spokane County to enjoy the same economic incentives or benefits that other counties in the state have with regard to recruiting data centers. And then Senator Riccelli sponsored that in the Senate. And so that unfortunately didn't pass, but Spokane County is one of the few counties in the state that doesn't have that incentive. Setting that aside, I find it interesting that from a leadership standpoint, and I complimented in a text to Representative Ormsby for his leadership, because this does mean that we have access to the resources provided by a data center, both for our medical professions, aerospace, education, advanced manufacturing, professional services. Data centers are used across the board. And in fact, my seatmates use the computer and their phones, much like all of us do, to research data from Google and all of those other data providers on a regular basis. And you talk about the letters that we received. Well, I had some of those letters look peculiarly similar. So I had our IT people take a look at it, and some of those letters were generated by AI. The same technology that they were complaining about. I hope you're starting to feel the hypocrisy that exists around this issue. What I'm hoping to do is to set all of that noise aside, and let's talk about how do we protect our community and take advantage of this new industry and the benefits that it provides to the community. So we've defined data centers as large load data centers as being 200 megawatts. And anything less than 200 megawatts would be considered, a small load, light load. And that the large load would only be allowed in heavy industrial zones. Light load could be either light or heavy industrial zones, but they're an industry. Let's put them in the industrial zones. We are not a water purveyor. We do not control what the water districts do with regard to water or Department of Ecology. So those agencies and those groups will determine whether water availability is in fact an issue or not. For the benefit of my fellow commissioners, new data centers that use closed loop cooling systems use less water on a daily basis than a family of four do. But the other thing is that some of the new data centers, and one of them that I'm working with, is talking about using wastewater So unless you drink water from the toilet, you're not gonna be impacted by this because you're using wastewater. Infrastructure expansion for the data center should be paid for by the developer, no question at all. Should be paid for by the developer, and that should not be passed on to the general public or to the ratepayers. Data centers should not be located closer than 300 feet to a residential property or 100 feet from the property line. Those are the same regulations we use for marijuana. Noise generated by data centers should not be greater than 65 decibel level at the property line because that's what we use for the airport. Rate structure for electrical use is regulated by the Washington State Utility Commission, not us. There's a process where these large load data centers have to get approval from either utility commission or maybe we enter into an MOU between the county and the utility and the developer to make sure that the rates do not burden our ratepayer base. The costs are paid for by the developer, not our ratepayer base, and that we are protected from that. And then all of the other SEPA application requirements that we currently use would apply to data centers as well. I find it interesting that the agencies that are created in the state to regulate development industries, evidently, the party that created those agencies had no confidence in those agencies doing their job, which is protecting the public. So I think that what this proposal would do is it would send a motion to the planning department, planning director to develop the necessary code amendment to be adopted and brought back to the Board of County Commissioners for our consideration by August 31. This is what leadership looks like. It's not having the community worry war and wring their hands for 9 months, waiting for a legislature on the other side of the state that doesn't have our values to dictate to us. It's us recognizing that we have an opportunity to bring this industry into the community, but on a cautious basis to make sure that our existing community and the quality of life that we cherish is not impacted. And the economic benefits that are provided for it, including a significant amount of tax base, tax revenue for the county, and we're currently struggling with balancing our budget. You know, the city of Quincy, which is known as the city that embraced data centers more aggressively than any other part of the state, 61% of the revenue, 61% of the revenue for the city of Quincy comes from data centers. They are large, very expensive buildings that pay large sums of property taxes and do not have a demand on our services. They do not have a demand for schools or libraries or parks, police and fires, all they require, but they pay for all of those other things. The other thing is that the construction industry, and I really praise Representative Ormsby for his leadership in this area, recognizing that the data centers will bring, I think the estimate I've saw is 1,200 good paying jobs to this community, high paying jobs for electricians, construction workers, and others. But there's also the ancillary benefit to the community, whether it's our hospitals having access to the data center and the services it provides, our colleges, our aerospace industries. You can go through the whole board. I mean, if you have one of these, you use a data center. And so to say that we're not going to somehow find a way, a path to embrace this opportunity while at the same time protecting our community, sticking our head in the sand. And then I'll close with, we used to have a policy that said that before we could consume our attorney's time developing legislation and policy, that we had to have the majority of the board saying, yes, we want to spend those resources. And yet we've got this moratorium that was developed without consensus from the majority of the board. And as we enter difficult financial times for the county, we've got to be very judicious about how we use the resources, including the manpower of our legal team and stuff. So for all of those reasons, I'm not going to support a moratorium. Moratorium is, you know, I understand Seattle or Spokane City Council follows the lead of Seattle and the mothership whenever it lands. That's not what we do. We provide leadership. We provide direction, policy language that protects the community and at the same time grows our economy. And looking at how the county has grown and how the city has not grown over the last several years is a prime example of the kind of leadership that we provide at the county. So, Madam Chair, I'll rest my comments, but I'm not in support of any moratorium.
Yeah, I was surprised when I saw this discussion on the agenda. Commissioner French and I have been having discussions along this, and when I saw a moratorium pop up, it was like, okay, well, we're just gonna have to present this today. I think we wanted to maybe polish it up a little bit more, but quite frankly, what Commissioner French said is correct. You know, the thing is, moratoriums lead to regulations. I think any of these jurisdictions that have adopted regulations have said it is to adopt these moratoriums. It's been to develop regulations. I think it's sad that individuals think a jurisdiction would need 9 months to a year to develop those types of regulations. The partial sheet that Commissioner Waldriff presented, the entire packet put out by the National Association of Counties has checkpoints of things that would be in draft legislation. If you look at the whole packet that they put out, I think with the common thread that I've seen in those emails and communications that we've been seeing from the public is they do want sort of reasonable, responsible, common sense regulations around data centers. And I think what Commissioner French has presented here meets that threshold. 9 months, again, I think it's just laughable that you think a government would need that. When you look at the other jurisdictions that have put in a year's worth of a year's moratorium, I mean, we should not be moving when it comes to economic development, when it comes to an issue this big, when it comes to what we're hearing, the outcry for this community, we shouldn't be moving at the speed of government. We need to move at the speed of business. And quite frankly, getting this taken care of by the end of August, I think shows true leadership, like Commissioner French stated. This is what people are looking for. We've done a great amount of work here, and quite frankly, I think we're open to amendments. We're open to continuing the discussion. I think if we direct our planning department to take this forward, put the finishing touches on this and have something by the end of August, we'll be leaders on this in the state, and we will find a way to have a positive economic growth, but also being able to protect our community that they have made it clear that they expect us to deliver on.
Okay. Two commissioners have one idea, two commissioners have another idea. I'm hearing some of these for the first time. But as the data center topics have certainly come up, I think the word moratorium is a word that we do hear as I think a scary word for business, I will say. Then when we say moratorium, I think it says we're closed for business, and we're not closed for business, you know, whether it's data centers or any of it. I mean, it's like the business community outside of Spokane County, when they're looking for places to go, it's like if they're willing to put a moratorium in for that, or what else are they doing? So I'm not in favor of a moratorium. I'm in favor of having that responsible, engaged community conversation that Commissioner Jordan, you were talking about. Because we need to engage with our utility companies, with our water purveyors to see what are they seeing, what are they hearing in their industry, that we can make a better decision on what our ordinance or resolution would look like. Because I don't know what that is. I know other counties across the nation have definitely talked about having regulations that put a closed loop system in, having no tax advantage for businesses coming in. Looking at noise, looking at water usage and electrical needs. And so I think those are the things that we do need to conversation about to figure out what does that really mean? I don't know what the noise level is from a data center. So, you know, is 100-foot setback enough or is it not? You know, so those are the conversations I think we do need to have. We need to have quickly because it is upon us. You know, out of 39 counties in Washington State, Snohomish, is there any other counties that have?
Skagit has a 6 month that just started June 1. They had a data center come in and is developing, so they have a moratorium now so they can put rules into place.
Okay, so I
There
think
are others too.
we need to look at what that is. When I don't know which the other ones are, but I mean, that's where.
Or Kids Up too, sorry, Kids Up.
I think we've got to be thoughtful. And so I'm in favor of looking at what that should be and looking at it quickly. But I'm not in favor of saying we are going to put a moratorium in because the city did put their moratorium in and I haven't heard of any community conversation that's started. So I'd rather us say we're going to start one, figure out what that is soon. Who's going to be on it, who needs to be on it, whether, and I'm happy to have it be a public conversation because I think the public deserves that transparency as we look at what's happening in other places. People know I know a little bit about Texas these days. So yes, the governor did pass, you know, the executive order, which our governor could. The one thing I would say, you know, we need to be cognizant of is that we do need to do this quickly and look at it. Because we've asked for wind farms in the past and solar farms for some regulations on that. And we have not gotten that finalized. I think all of it, you know, a solar farm takes up as much space as what a data center would take. It provides, you know, back into the grid, but it also takes up all that farmland and agricultural land that as the GMA is working so hard to try to continue to keep. So I think with our comp plan going on right now and with this happening, it's the time to do it. But I'm not in favor of moratorium, but I'm in favor of quickly having conversations so we know, and we're not just rash in making regulations, but we're making good policy recommendations.
I notice we have our planning director on that. If at some point in this discussion, if you can touch on sort of what processes are out there, because we do have a planning commission that this could also go through, which has the public participation process, public hearings, open. So there are processes laid out as well for these types of decisions as well.
Yes.
Just a few comments in response to what others are saying. First of all, I haven't seen this, so happy to take a look at this. Thanks for the ideas. I just wanted to emphasize, you know, I understand the board's position, but a moratorium is a temporary pause. And you can come out of a moratorium earlier than the maximum date that it's scheduled for. But again, just to remind the board that if a complete permit comes through the door tomorrow, it operates maybe too late at that point to actually do any of these ideas. It sounds like there is an agreement here that some responsible rules are needed, but without a pause, the status quo rules are what they are. I just wanted to say I'm happy to have Mr. Chesney here. I asked for feedback on my proposal. And I was told that 9 months was a stretch to get a study and rules done. So if there's other information, I'm happy to hear that. That's not what I was told. I think it is unfortunate that some of the comments try to frame this as a political issue. I think that's inappropriate and frankly unprofessional in some of the comments that are made. I don't know why it would be necessary to question anybody's patriotism in a discussion where Kootenai County imposed a moratorium. And unless Kootenai County is a stronghold of the Democratic Party, this is not a political issue. It is about taking the time to get it right and to make sure that basic protections are in place for our constituents. I recognize also that technology is changing, and perhaps that could be a good thing in mitigating some of the issues that other communities are facing. But again, we can't just rely on the word of industry that they are going to be better. We have to have rules in place to protect the public when it comes to water, power, and other issues. So I hope that we can get to that better place.
Mr. Chesney, I see you're on Zoom. If you would like to talk to what the process is.
Certainly, commissioners, good morning. Generally speaking, forgetting the subject matter, this would be most notably done as a zoning text amendment. That would be something that would be initiated by the board, much like many of these are, and then processed through staff, through a public participation program, through public hearings with the Planning Commission, and then a recommendation back to the board. All of that does take time, but in the 6 weeks that Commissioner French mentioned, that is sufficient time for us to have a draft in front of you for consideration and final direction. There are other state mandates for changing our development regulations, including Commerce Review and SEPA reviews that would come along with that. And to Commissioner Jordan's concern, normally, yes, 9 months starting from scratch is a bit of a challenge when we do have some other work on our plate right now, trying to finish up our comprehensive plan. But that said, we can prioritize our time and have draft information to you roughly by Labor Day. So that's not an unreasonable aspect. The approval process does take time and is set by many of the statutory deadlines that we follow for other zoning text amendments. So it would follow clearly within that milieu, and I think is at least doable from a perspective of getting you the information you need. And along that line, we have been tracking this for some time. There have been some inquiries, as Commissioner French has noted, and we're preparing right now what we call a best practices report based on what's happened in Washington and also around the country, taking those examples to an analysis level and being able to lay out for you what we feel are the best practices for data centers at this time. So some of that work has been done up front, which is why we believe we can have a draft to you in that 6 weeks period.
So Commissioner Jordan, I brought this forward for discussion, and I appreciate that Commissioner Kearns and French were already looking at some of the regulations that potentially we could put into place. I would still strongly recommend, because even if we can have conversation in the next several months and go through a public process that, through our planning commission and all the hearings that are necessary, I would still strongly recommend that we pursue a moratorium. And if we can get it done in 3 or 4 months by the end of the year, that would be wonderful. I think the way we wrote the proposal was just up to, knowing that we have our comprehensive plan due at the end of this year, and we are working very diligently on that. Our planning team is working very hard to meet that deadline. And we have our budget to adopt by the end of the year, and we have a lot to do on that over the next several months. I feel a responsibility to our community that we work as diligently as possible. But in the meantime, I would not want to see a permit come in to build something that we haven't had the policy conversation about. So that's just my concern, but I'm all for doing it more quickly if we can muster our resources to do that.
Mr. Nation.
Madam Chair, I have no position, of course, on this issue, but Mr. Chesney is listening, and I'd like to remind him, the same statute that allows us to adopt a moratorium also allows us to adopt an interim zoning ordinance without going through a complex process. So in the same fashion that the board could act on the moratorium today, once Commissioner French's and Commissioner Jordan's and this dialogue takes place, we could adopt that ordinance without going through a public hearing through the planning commission. We would have to adopt it in the same fashion we would the moratorium. So I wanted to clear up the time frame issue because that may be relevant in your decision-making process. And Mr. Chesney, please correct me if I have misstated what you understand.
No, not at all, Mr. Maceo. We were, and I guess I should have laid out both alternatives. We laid out the more traditional approach, but yes, Mr. Maceo's laid out the same track approach that could be used as the moratorium. We agree.
Does the board have any questions on what I just shared? If you did, I'm more than happy to respond to those inquiries.
Well, thank you, Mr. Maceo, and we have done that in the past as a county. And if it was the will of the board, quite frankly, you could take the work that Commissioner Kearns and I have drafted out here and adopted as an interim ordinance today. And then that way you prevent the opportunity for somebody to come in and take advantage of this 6-week period. And so there are ways to address the perceived concerns from fellow commissioners and still be able to move forward. I agree with Commissioner Brooks. The word moratorium in the business community says we are closed for business. Thank you very much. And Spokane County is not closed for business. We've created thousands of jobs, billions of dollars of economic investment. And it's not because we've shied away, but it's because we've been in a leadership role to take advantage of those opportunities.
The last time we adopted an interim ordinance like this, I'll remind the board members, is when we had the water rights issue. You recall that Ecology stopped issuing any building permits because of the lack of water rights. So the county commissioners directed staff to prepare an interim ordinance, which we adopted without a public hearing. It took us a week to get it done. And then after we adopted it as an interim basis, we went through the other process and fine-tuned it, if you will. But it was so critical to get it done because we wanted to ensure that individual property owners could obtain building permits for individual residences in the unincorporated areas. And but for this ordinance, there was a complete moratorium through Department of Ecology on issuing any building permits. So we have, as Mr. Chesney indicated, we have used this other method from time to time when it's appropriate at the discretion of the Board of County Commissioners. I don't know, Madam Chair, and I'm looking at Commissioner French, I don't know whether or not, I'm looking at Mr. Folsom, whether or not we can take whatever you're proposing, board members, and put it in the form of a resolution for your action this afternoon. I would leave that in Matt's hands, and because, Madam Chair, we can bring on items by leave, but that requires, as you know, the public to be able to comment on those, whether or not you bring on Commissioner Jordan's proposal or Commissioner French's proposal. Both of them would be acted on in the same fashion. So I don't think I have any other statements to make unless the board has some questions of me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Well, we're gonna be off for 2 weeks. So I think that's gonna give us the time. I'm not willing to make a decision today on your item, as I haven't seen it until just now, and we have a noon meeting that goes till the time, our 2 o'clock meeting. So I will not have time between now and then, as Commissioner Jordan knows, we both are in a meeting. I will not be supporting anything today. So, but in 2 weeks, I hope we can have staff take a look at it. We can have conversations with others to see what people think should be in these ordinances. We can look at what other ordinances are with other counties, other than just, again, a moratorium just pushes it down the road. I think it's important enough that we're all saying it's important enough to look at it quickly and get something done. So that's what I would like to do.
I'll say you will find that this draft is very closely in line with best practices as laid out by NACO, National Association of Counties. And I think it actually hits on many things that were stated that Governor of Texas has said, that was referenced in Commissioner Jordan's remarks, and hits on the main points that we've heard from constituents that have concerns with these facilities. So I think it's a great balance. It's very reasonable, very common sense, and I think it would have wide support across this community.
Thank you all for bringing it forward. Any other comments on this topic before we go to the next? Okay. It's going to take us to our safe and healthy discussion. Commissioner Jordan.
All right, another commissioner topic. So Commissioner Brooks and I have been involved in the Safe and Healthy Task Force planning conversations for years now.
Feels like it.
So we've been working with the conveners of the task force, which includes a lot of business stakeholders and health stakeholders. We have been working with Sheriff Knowles has been on the planning team. Preston McCollum, the prosecutor's been joining that group more recently. I just want to thank all of the county staff who were involved, continue to be involved. Mike Sparker, Justin Johnson, Judge Hazel. There have been many others as well. And, we have a deadline that we've discussed here several times of, I believe, August 4th to make a decision about whether to send a November ballot measure to the auditor's office. And so Commissioner Brooks and I had talked and thought it'd be a good opportunity to just address where the county stands with that development of the potential ballot measure. And so we could each share our thoughts, and I would ask you to do so first as the chair. And then we can see what other commissioners' views are.
Yeah, and we have a meeting at noon on the facility side of it. But I think we all feel like there's a lot that has happened. There's a lot of momentum. Hopeful to get something on the ballot in November, but we also want to make sure something passes. And I, in my heart right now, do not feel like if we put something on the ballot in November, it's going to pass. So I feel like we've got to show that our further commitment to this and what we're doing, and that's what we're working on right now, to show what can happen along the way as we go to what a ballot measure would look like in August or November of next year. We certainly can, before the end of this year, put that ballot measure on for next year and show our commitment to the community, and for that. But I think at this time, I don't feel like we can go and do justice to a ballot measure in November to make sure this passes and make sure the community understands what the true need is and why it's needed, and what the purpose is for. So that was, I think, sad. We've been working towards this date, and we knew we could do a special meeting if we needed to, but I think it's more important for it to be supported by the community, have the community really understand, all the voters understand, because as we know, we've had a lot of public input, we've had a lot of meetings, a lot of community members have been part of this discussion along the way, but in the end, it's the voters that have to vote for it, and it's getting that information out to them so that it's understandable. And I don't think we have enough time to do that. We're still looking at what, we've got our Essentials for Public Facilities Committee that is working. We've got an assessment that's being done as to what the needs are. Those are not finished yet, so we're just not at that time. But it doesn't mean that the work isn't going to continue. So I think we're going to show the work that's going to continue. I will continue doing it till the end of the year, before I retire. So I think that's important for the community to know, and for the people that have put so much time and effort in, to know that we are still going to work hard and put in the time to make this work.
And I appreciate your comments and all of your work on it. We've come a really long way in the process. I'm really appreciative and proud of the work that's been done so far. The conveners really brought together a diverse group of stakeholders. The task force produced a roadmap for us that does give a list of priorities to consider. It's a thoughtful framework. It addresses both the need for right-sized, modernized correctional facilities and as well the system and operational and programmatic needs to achieve better outcomes. I've really appreciated that it's been safe and healthy. So it's recognizing that there's an overlap of those two things and that they go hand in hand. I agree. We've got a lot of work that is ongoing to continue the momentum. The planning team is continuing to meet and discuss a number of potential initiatives that could begin in the near future as regional collaborations. Facilities work group is meeting here shortly to dive into some of the concepts we've talked about around an intake assessment center as to what that could look like as a phase 1 plan. So despite all of that work, I think there is a recognition that there's more work to be done for a ballot measure to be ready. And so I hope we will continue the work with our regional partners full steam ahead. We'll continue to gather the community input. We'll continue fleshing out the facilities plan as well as the other programmatic priorities. We can work towards some level of coordination and or agreements with other jurisdictions as Whatcom County did before their successful ballot measure. And there's a lot that is in the Safe and Healthy report that could be really important for the community if it was able to be realized. There's expansion of co-deployed teams. There's targeted staffing investments in prosecutors, public defense, judicial capacity, law enforcement. We could do more mental health screening for youth with more resources. We can share data, better analyze that. We could have peer support and housing support. We could target some more effort towards high utilizers, aka the small group of people causing a disproportionate share of the problems and crime in our community. We could look at job training efforts. We've talked a lot about work crew here, but we need to do some additional work to refine and prioritize those costs. So appreciate all your work. I agree that we should target the next possible date when we can be ready with the right measure. So if it is the 2/10 public safety measure, as we've talked about, August, I believe, of next year would be the next date for that. Although if it's a different revenue option, we could have different timelines as well. And then lastly, I just wanted to remind everybody that while we are hopefully continuing to build on the momentum of Safe and Healthy, we're already doing a lot as the board. We've got the STARS sobering beds, which is saving lives right now. We are funding the expansion of the city fire department's behavioral response unit. We are building the PATH Center expansion. We're supporting the Crisis Stabilization Center. We're funding Maddie's Place. Justin's department has a whole list of behavioral health programs out there on the streets, and we could go on and on. So looking forward to the work going forward. And would welcome any other thoughts.
We really all hope that we could get to this point and be putting the resolution on, but it just seemed like the right time yet, but we'll get there. And yes, and next August, for the 0.2% for public safety, it has to go on either the August or November ballots. So just so people know why we couldn't put it on sooner.
Well, it's good feedback. I think that's kind of the sense I've been getting too, is that there's like great momentum, but there's some Ts we have to cross with understanding how much funding is available, and then which projects could be funded, and we want to make sure we do that. You know, to put something on a ballot so folks know what they're buying. Do you feel like there's momentum though to get to some of those agreements between the jurisdictions about like how we might, what things might be prioritized, what things might make it on a ballot? Inter jurisdictional agreements on how we might share money, like by the end of the year, so that we would have a sense of where we're going.
I think once we get the Essential Public Facilities Committee finalized and the assessment the consultants, I think that's gonna help us then know what the needs are to then be able to get those jurisdictional agreements. But I think until we have the assessment,
And that's when are we planning to get the
it should be within the.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, so
So I mean, so that's why, once we have that, then we can start to think through and talk about it here before we start to go out with other committees. So.
Okay.
And we've had the city, several city leaders and valley leaders at the table throughout, and they've been great participants. I'm hopeful we'll continue to see that.
Okay, so we are way over time. So I'm seeing no one else want to comment. Any other miscellaneous items, because we have time for an executive session? Or two.
I think the two executive sessions we have first are both longer for the amount of time. So I would recommend just pushing them all to this afternoon.
Okay, and how long will we?
45 minutes total.
For all the executives?
They're all like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah,
About like
20 minutes, 15 minutes, and then or 10 minutes. It needs to be last.
Oh, I just said I'm unavailable.
Available too, so do we need to do something?
We can,
We can try.
we need to be out of the room in 11 minutes.
Oh,
Try.
Sure.
Okay, let's try. We've got one executive session pending a potential litigation, RCW 4231 11 minutes and 30 seconds, no action.
Okay. Gonna go into executive session for the reason just stated. We will, when we adjourn, no action will be taken, and we'll adjourn for the morning and see everybody back at our 2 o'clock.
it's